Hello everybody, what's going on? Glowplasma231 here. And here in June of 2023, we've gotten 2 new World Trigger chapters. We've gone 2 months without getting our last one in April and only getting 1 chapter then. So having 2 here in June is really awesome, and as per usual, I want to talk about both of them. So without further ado, this is going to be my review of World Trigger chapters 233 and of course 234. These chapters are titled the Away Mission Part Test 30 and the Away Mission Part Test 31, respectively. I'm sure you couldn't have guessed that how World Trigger has been naming its Away Mission Test arc so far. So, yes, without further ado, let's just hop right into them. But before that, I just would like to talk about what happened last time on World Trigger. So last chapter was all about Ninamiya's Squad 8, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check that here real fast. Yeah, Ninamiya Squad 8. And how Chica in that squad was really getting targeted and was not doing too well at the end of it. She was clearly not fine whenever Ninamiya was asking her so. And at the end of the chapter, it was a big thing where, what are they going to do because Chica's just getting so screwed over. And if I remember correctly, last time Emma had a few things where he just got a little pissed at Ninamiya for not giving clear sage advice, as Ninamiya probably should be doing, being that he has a crush on Chica, but that's beside the point. We actually get a bit more of that in this chapter. But, like I said, start off with chapter 233. We start off with, of course, more battle sim stuff. As we see that their, 10th, 9th, 8th, their 7th match of the day is against Kodera Squad 6, and Ninamiya Squad ends up losing 10-16. So they lost more units. What's there really to happen there, right? The 8th match is Ninamiya Squad 8 versus Utagawa Squad 1, where they end up having a draw with 13 points, or 13 kills, and 15 losses. And that's another interesting thing, is I don't know if you remember this, but in World Trigger, this away mission test battle simulations, to have a draw, I think you need to be within 4 or 5 in that range, and that would clearly make sense because as we see in the 9th match, it is against Wakamura Squad 11, and it's another draw where they get 18 kills, but they only get killed 14 times. So that's only a 4 range, while the loss was a 6 range. So if I had to guess, it's in between 5 and 4, but we can probably just reread the entire arc to clearly get an answer, but I don't really feel like doing that right now. And we see that their 10th match of the day is actually a break. And as we see this, we just see Chica just laying in front of her computer, just all sort of bummed out, just like, oh no, what's going on, right? As we see the operator, which is Rin Kamigami, I'm going to just call her Kagami here. She's just like, oh, here, Optomori, as she gives her a nice cup of coffee, or I don't know, coffee, tea, whatever the Japanese feel like drinking in this. As they're sitting here, and she's just like, thank you. As Emma's just looking over on this, and looking over all the results of the day, and he's just like, we just couldn't rack up any wins at all, right? And he's just like, while there's one more match for everyone else today, we are done, being that this is our break match. And he's like, we only had 1 total win today. And he started to think more of like, why in the world did every squad come after Chica with a massive vengeance like that? As I also want to look at the sort of stat sheet that we get, and while we can't clearly see what match 1, 2, what 1 and 2 really were about, we can see that match 3 was against Murakami Squad, 4 was Kuruma Squad, 5 was Kitazoe Squad, and that match against Kitazoe Squad was actually the only one that they won that day, being that they had 1 win, 4 losses, and 4 draws, totaling up to 9 total battles, with this 10th match being their break. And at this point, we cut over to Ozma, as he's just like, they're surely familiar with how powerful Chica is from the rank wars, so they could probably estimate her unit's capabilities in this exercise. But he's like, this is really hitting her really hard. Now, this is interesting to note because at the end of chapter 334, we sort of learn maybe a different reason why this could be, but I'll bring that up at the time. But that's just something to note, is we actually have the answer to probably why they all knew what Chica's capabilities were during this time, right? So they're sitting there, and Ninamiya starts to speak up, and just throughout this, I just imagine him having such a condescending voice, right? As he's just like, Amatore, have you figured out anything on your own yet? And Chica's just there, and she literally just breaks down, and she doesn't seem like she's crying yet, but she's just like very upset at herself. She's like, I just can't do anything right. I'm sorry, right? As Kagami is just like, what are you talking about? It's not your fault at all. As Ninamiya just continues going, you do not seem to understand, Amatore. From the very start, I stated that I wouldn't be giving any specific commands. I wanted you all to think and act on your own. Do you recall that? As long as my squad members follow that overarching directive, then any and all responsibility lies with me, our captain in charge. And Chica's just here and she's like, but, as she thinks back to during one of the physical rank wars when she was still with Tamakoma 2, she remembers Asami just being like, hey, you acted on my orders. It's your fault. As Chica's is like, I wish it could have been just back like then, as we see this was the moment that she ended up shooting somebody for the first time, right? And here in the present, Chica's just like, well, I just wanted to take charge and do my duty right. As everybody just looks at her, and Ninamiya is just like, and you're suggesting to us that you didn't achieve that here? And she's like, yes, that's the case. And Ninamiya just says, attempting to reach a solution on your own is very admirable in a way. But as soon as you realize that you were in over your head, you should have asked everybody else for help. You need to do that before you reach the point of no return, after everything gets out of hand. And that's exactly what you did here. You let everything get out of hand. As you remember last time, as Ninamiya said, hey, speak up if you're having an issue, right? And she just did her whole thing of, no, I'm just fine. Showing that at that point, Ninamiya sort of had this idea in mind, and it just came off to a lot of people, me especially, just he was being an asshole. Which in all fairness, that is what Ninamiya is, but we sort of see a bit more clear side of him here, right? At this point, probably the wisest mentor in this group, Ozma, speaks up, and he's just like, hey, listen, Chica, the point of a test is to learn what you can't do. You're meant to discover your own personal shortcomings. This test brought to light one of your issues in advance of the away mission, and that's good enough as a purpose. Your job isn't to be down in the dumps, but rather to improve yourself before the big mission. He's like, yeah, isn't that right, Ninamiya? As Ninamiya is just like, yeah, that's correct. And Emma's just sitting here, just looking at me, and like, dude, you couldn't have mentioned that earlier whenever she was crying over here? Come on, dude, what do you think you're doing? Be better than this, be better than this, be better than this. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know why I'm sort of giving him that voice, but he's just like, come on, Ninamiya, be better about this, be better. And Chica's just here, and she's sort of just like, alright, I understand. As we see that she's sort of got a lot more pep to her step now, after sort of giving that information of, you've learned something about yourself, and you can improve that, right? And at this point, Kagami, the operator, speaks up again, and she's just like, alright then, back to the Battle Sim post-mortem. Why is it a post-mortem? That's such a weird wording to use. I mean, I understand what she's saying, but why use the wording post-mortem? Like, is that the actual Japanese wording? I mean, I don't know Japanese. I'm sure I could find a scan of the Japanese World Trigger chapter here, but that's such random wording to use. And is that just something that's a translator? I mean, who is the translator of World Trigger? Caleb Cook? Is that just what they're sort of adding in there? Like, what's going on there, right? But she's just like, back to the Balsam post-mortem. Hey, Chico, what actions would you like everybody else to take so we can sort of learn? And I do like that in this note that this is, as far as if I'm not mistaken, this is the final day of the Battle Sims. So it's not like this is going to really help out later on, but this is just good to know for future reference when, of course, they have to work together again, right? As Chica starts to really speak up, she's like, oh, well, here's what I was thinking. As we see that Chica has sort of returned to her former self and is not in the dumps anymore as much as she was in the past few chapters, right? This actually really reminds me of the Katori, like, mini arc that we've already had during this, where she was so down in the dumps about not being good, and what sort of brought her out of it was something a lot more stupid, with the whole thing of getting to go on a date with Scruffy Hottie Karasuma. But yeah, it's with Chica, That's just really good, and if I have to say, Ozma really gives not only a good lesson for World Trigger, but a really good life lesson in general here with, again, just that little note of... What was his note? With his note of, the tests are about realizing what you can't do, and I mean, as somebody who's ever been in school, that should ring very true. A test really tells you what you can and can't do. Taking benchmark testing tells you what you can and can't do, and you can prepare that for next time, right? But now we get to World Trigger's bread and butter, which is meeting rooms. As, I guess you could call everybody sitting at the table here a meeting room, but it's not as much as what's happening here at the Management HQ desk, as we see 5 characters, 4 of the directors of Border, and then Jin is here, so we see Captain Kido, Captain Shinomiya, Netsuki, and also Kinuta, if I'm not mistaken, along with Jin. Something I find really interesting is that Rindo isn't here, which I know that he is the branch officer of Tamakoma branch, so I don't know why he wouldn't be here, but it's just a little interesting thing to note, right? So Netsuki starts off just going like, and that brings today's battle sims now to a close, so let's examine all the results here. And he's like, so claiming first place with 6 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw, and the squad that earned 1,240 points was Suwa Squad 7, as we see all of their match details, and I'm not going to read them off because we get practically every single squad in here. So, and also we have seen most of what Suwa Squad did, being that they are, while not the main, I'm lying, they are the main squad of this arc, right? I'm completely lying about that. And he is sitting here, and he's just like, or Kinuta says, he's like, 6 wins, huh? And she knows, like, man, I never expected such a stellar performance, exceptionally from a squad who wasn't really doing that good. And Jin backs that up, saying they really buckled down and focused on day 3 when each win meant way more points. And it feels like Sua's leadership style is really ideal for this job at hand. And if we remember, while in the physical rank wars, I call them the physical rank wars, but these aren't even rank wars. During the rank wars, while Sua's squad was ranked fairly low, it was always shown that Suwa did have a really good leadership style. And I guess that just translates a lot better here than in the rank wars, right? Or for his actual team. Granted, for his team, he has 2 more or less experienced characters with him. 2 that I honestly don't remember the name right now of. Being that World Trigger has so many characters. But it's just a fun thing to note is, yeah, I mean, they've clearly shown that Suwa is the cream of the crop as it sort of comes, right? And this is amazing what comes next. Captain Kido speaks up and he's like, but we should also credit Agent Makumo for his analysis and ideas. This is Kido praising Osamu. Holy crap! I mean, if you've read World Trigger and you understand the series, you probably understand how big of a deal this actually is. Whether or not you want to say it at all, I mean, it took me a lot of time to realize this. Osamu is the main character of World Trigger, and coming with this, we've always seen the whole thing between Kido and Osamu, right? Currently in Tamakoma branch, which was of course the original headquarters of Border, Osamu is sleeping in Rindo's room, or not Rindo, Kido's older room, and just the relationship they have with Osamu, saying everything about the away mission tests and all of that. This is really good and really cool character development to have Kido be praising Osamu. Like, this is awesome, right? And we even see here that Shinoda is just like, man, he's praising him? As you also see Jin is just giving like a nice warm smile here, just going like, I knew he had it in him, right? And Netsuki is even like, yes, without a doubt. And Kinu's like, especially with his tactic with the video exercises, it shows that he's really smart. He continues, moving on into second place, we have Kitazoe's Squad 4. They achieved 1,100 1,120 points across 5 wins, 2 losses, and 4 draws. Up through yesterday, their heavy bombardment were really scattered about, but today they put more of a pinpoint on that, which successfully screwed over all of the squads who had specific countermeasures to them. And we, of course, see that School Squad was one of those that ended up losing to Kitazoe's squad. And also, if I'm not mistaken, that Ninamiya squad also did that. Ninamiya squad lost to them. No, I'm sorry. They lost to Ninamiya squad. That's what it was. There are too many names. So, continuing dialogues, like, as you pointed out, and Netsuki calls him R&D Director Kinuda. Sure, let's just throw in the R&D in there all of a sudden. Why not just call him Director Kinuda? R&D Director Kinuda. So, Miyase is saying this squad didn't devote much time and effort into preparing for the combat sims, but that allowed them to focus their energy on other assignments today. And Jin's just like, and they still placed very high, so we gotta give them props. Third place was a tie. Both Utagawa Squad 1 and Kadera Squad 6 tied, and they came away with 4 wins, 1 loss, and 5 draws for an even 1,000 points each. So yeah, look at that. Pretty cool. As we get more dialogue, both of these squads are two that colluded with Sua's, right? As we of course know what Osamu was sort of talking with, and Sue and all of them were talking about with Kodera, and of course they shared information with Utagawa Squad also, just for the whole thing with Kodera Squad teaching Osamu how to fight with Limited Tryon, and also Yuma is on Utagawa Squad, and that sort of had them talk to each other, right? And Jin's just like, man, only 1 loss apiece for both. I'm really impressed with that, right? It really shows that both of these are really reliable teams, and it definitely makes them feel that way. She knows just like being able to leverage the resources of other squads beyond one's own speaks to an aptitude for strategy and tactics, right? Next is OG Squad 2, which lost out on 3rd place by a tiny amount, or 4 wins, 2 losses, and 4 draws put them in 5th, and they have 960 points, which, yeah, is only 40 points away from Kodera Squad and Utagawa Squad. I'm pretty sure that if you added everything together here and, like, how much draws are worth, you could probably do the math, see how much each thing is worth, but I may do that later, right, and just post results on here, but it's just something interesting to note that so far, both Sua and Kitazoe were 120 points apart, and they were both, again, 120 points apart from Kodera Squad. But yeah, that 40-point difference, that is very small in this whole scheme of 1,000 plus points, right? Netsuki continues just saying about how OG Squad employed a very interesting strategy to do that, right? As we see whenever in the morning, OG sort of talked to his squad and be like, hey, let's talk to Battle Sims today. And he's just like, I'm thinking we've all gotten the hang of this game, so I want you to swap around the units you're controlling, right? This isn't something entirely unknown, as we know that this is what Sua Squad is doing with moving the units, right? And Suji is in this squad. Of course, Suji is a very girl-shy character. He's just like, swap around, how so? As we see the operator of this squad, Hikari, just being like, but why would we purposely do something like that? I mean, what's going on there, right? And I love this. Is OG just like, oh, you want an example? Let's look at Ikoma over here, right? As you all know, Ikoma always goes overboard with how much he uses Whirlwind, right? And our rivals have probably caught on to how much he uses this and are starting to predict his moves, right? As we see Ikoma is just here got pounded, like, oh no, as he's sort of clutching his heart, right? And all of a sudden, Oji just continues to rub it in, just saying, and when his own avatars get attacked, he's fine with it as long as they die in a funny way. As Ikoma does the same thing, just going like, oh no, what are you saying? As he's here, and Suji looks over to him, and he's just like, was that really your thought process, right? And Ikoma's just like, well, I might as well spread smiles and joy as I die, right? Yeah, that's totally what it is. And Suji's just like, save the smiles for when we win as a team, right? As Oki's just like, today I want Iko to control Obinayan's units, right? And he's just like, but what are you talking about, right? And Ochi makes a really good point, like, you don't want Obinine dying, right? So keep her alive and show us a rousing performance using her fighters, right? As Akoma's just like, here, man, such a solemn responsibility. I don't know if I can pull this off, right? But at this point, Obi-Washima is just like, does that mean that I'm going to be taking charge of Iko's units? And Oji's just like, no, all of Iko's are going to be my units, so instead you'll take over my units. So we just see there's sort of a unit trade going on here between Ikoma, Obi-Washima, and Oki, right? And everybody's like, yeah, alright, that sounds good, right? And Oji even says it's to Obi-Washima, just being like, hey, keep playing like you did yesterday and we'll all be fine, right? As Tsuji speaks up and he's just like, but Oji, what about me? And he's just like, hey, Tsuji, just keep being you, that's good enough. You are really the cornerstone of our defense, and you can make the Tsuji units move like they should, right? As he's like, yes, sir. As we see that Tsuji has a little bit of blush on his face, sort of like getting praised like this. That's something really cool, right? And Akari's just like, but if you want to swap that bad, want to switch with me, right? And of course we know that this means that Tsuji would have to do all of the operator work, which I really don't think he'd be good at. And again, I don't really know how good Akari would be with fighting with Tsuji's units, so whatever. But Tsuji denies this anyway. That is out of that flashback, which went on for a good, look at that, 3 pages. As we now go back to the big meeting room, as she noticed just like, their thinking was very similar to that of Kizoe's squad. Both squads provoked a particular counter strategies before shifting their gears on the final day, sort of setting something in stone and then totally switching out of it to ensure that they can catch other squads off guard, right? Jin is just like, it wasn't a meticulously thought out plan, but it's neat how automatically they got the best of their opponents and how everybody in that squad sort of just latched on, and it was a lot more effective than actually trying to make Akoma stick to a strategy, being that Akoma can be very stupid at times. Netsuki continues just saying, and now the squad took more losses than wins today, with 4 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. Kuruma's squad 5 took 6th place, and in 7th place, Kakizaki squad 3 had 3 wins, 4 losses, and 3 draws. As we see that they get 840 and 720 points exactly, showing again a difference of 120 points. And at this point, I'm going to say that 120 points is the amount of points for wins. That is what I'm going to guess, because every time, I mean, they have the exact same stats, same exact amount of, actually don't have the same amount of losses, but Kakizaki has more draws, whatever, I don't know. That's just my intuition. I don't know how these points are calculated. For all I know, Ashihara could just be making all this stuff up. Who knows? But at this point, he continues on saying, Murakami Squad 10 took 8th place with 3 wins, 5 losses, and 2 draws, getting a total of 680 points. And, I hate to break to you, but it's 140 points less. So, I think my math may be a little off there. Kinuda continues just going like, these would be the squads that took debate when it came to all the others' outlandish schemes. Their own competence got the better for them, right? But she notices like, hey, at least they all achieved 3 or 4 wins, right? And Jin's just like, maybe they could have even countered the others' lost strategies if they had one more day, but being this is the final day, that's it for them. And then Ski's just like, yes, Murakami's squad in particular seems to be the type that can grow much more capable over a time with practice. And this is sort of funny to me, knowing who is on Murakami's squad, as it's Daichi, Kumagai, Kuraichi, and Murakami himself. And those 3 characters are some that like don't really get a whole lot of focus on. I mean, Kumagai is the only real important one there. And just knowing that Murakami's side effect is the sleep one, where if he sleeps, he can figure out more stuff. Yes, they would probably grow better under the leadership of Murakami over time. But Kinoda's just like, but that's why we limit the exercises to just 3 days for this reason. And at this point, Netsuki's is like, and now the squads that caught your attention, Commander Kido. We must discuss Ninamiya's squad 8 and Mizukami's squad 9. as we start to go into a flashback saying a few hours before the battle scenes began, as Mizukami is saying, okay, so let's go over to General Strat for today, as that's where chapter 233 ends off. This is a really action-packed chapter, and by that I mean it's action-packed with boardroom talk. And if that's not Scream World Trigger, I don't know what does. I am personally going to go take a break because I've been recording for a good few minutes. And whenever I get back, we're going to be talking about World Trigger chapter 234. So, hey, it's going to start now. Alright everybody, so now before we get back into World Trigger with chapter 234, I actually want to talk about World Trigger Volume 26. Because today that this video is coming out, the day after these chapters were released, on June 2nd of 2023, Volume 26 is officially coming out. And this is just something really fun to know, because this is actually the first World Trigger volume that's coming out since I've been doing this series on the channel. Now, I don't actually pick up World Trigger volumes from Japan. I own them all physically in English, and we'll pick it up in English whenever it comes out. I do own the Border Briefing Files, exclusive Japanese data book. I do own that from Japan, but none of the volumes, and I probably won't get any of the volumes. But just a fun thing to note that World Trigger Volume 26 is out. You will be seeing it here in the video that you're watching right now. I mean, you've seen it this entire time, along with the English Volume 25 cover that you see there. But just in case you haven't realized, this book is showing Kitazoe's Squad 4, which means that the first one had Suo Squad 7, the second one ended up having Mizukami Squad 9, and now we've got Kitazoe's Squad 4, with, of course, Kitazoe standing there, Kai is up on his shoulder, and we also see Kikuchihara and Kazuto also standing there, and of course Hana standing up front. This is a very interesting sort of choice, and the only reason I can really see this is because it has Kikuchihara and Hana on it. I mean, while Kitazoe is important and Kazuto and Kai are less important, right? Hana's been very important during this with her relationship to Kotori, and also Kikuchihara is always just been a character that's been focused on by Ashihara, but that's beside the point. I just wanted to mention that here real fast. So, Volume 26 is now on sale in Japan the day this video is coming out, right? Definitely didn't delay it for that reason. Definitely didn't delay it because I was too lazy to film it yesterday. And also I had the Fire Punch video coming out. Hey, go check out the Fire Punch video. Me and Jane had a fun time talking about it, but that's beside the point. Back to World Trigger, chapter number 234. Again, this chapter's titled Away Mission Test Part 31. So we start off again with Mizukami just going like, alright, today we're going to be focusing on these tactics against the top 4 squads. As he circles 6 total squads here, as he circles these top 4, which are Kodera Squad, Murakami, Ninamiya, Kuruma, and outside that is Utagawa and Suwa's, right? And he's like, we're going to at least win 2, maybe 3 if doable, out of 4 possible wins, right? If we're taking a 100-point scale, 2 wins is like 80% of the points that we're going to end up needing, while 3 would end up giving us about 120. I'm thinking of it that way, right? So pretty much showing that while he wants to go over, he doesn't. I don't really know. I personally don't really get what he's saying there, but hey, it's shown that Mizukami is supposed to be really smart, and I guess I'm not. So, but sitting here with him, Kaisho, or Kasho, whatever you want to call him here, he's just like, so are you suggesting that we throw to matches against the lower ranked squads? And he's just like, no, I wouldn't put it that way. More like we won't take him too seriously, right? We'll still try, but we won't do it. But he's like, the first factor is who is going to be easier to beat, right? At this point, Suwa Squad and Utagawa squads will be eager to make up the point difference and catch up, as we saw that both of these 2 squads did really well in the last chapter, so it's obvious that yes, they did want to catch up, and that they did. And he's just like, there's a decent chance they'll totally switch up whatever strats they were running yesterday, and he's just, and again, what's his name, Kasha's just like, and you really think they'd take that sort of gamble and do or die? And Mizukami's like, yeah, they're pretty predictable. Which is funny to note because Suwa and Utagawa squads didn't really do that. They just really honed their skills and made 1 or 2 adjustments that really benefited everything. While Oki Squad, or OG Squad, and Kitazoe Squad, I was right there, too many characters, oh my gosh. They were the squads who actually ended up performing those tactics like this. Either way, he's just like, and since we've got even more units than yesterday, including 4 total backup units, who knows how exactly they'll choose to gamble, right? There are so many options, it's almost limitless. We'd be wasting a lot of time coming up with counters for every possible strat, plus it's highly likely that the gist of our plan would leak, which would screw us over in the long run. Meanwhile, the leaders of the pack are just the types who come at us with the same straightforward tactics they've been polishing. As we see, this is Murakami, Karuma, oh my gosh, Kodera, and then Amiya. So 2Ks and M and a N. Pretty cool. And of course we know that's exactly what we do, and so Mizukami really guessed that pretty well. He's smart boy, smart boy. As he's just like, that said, there's still a chance to whip out some new strats because they're going to be gunning for us in particular, a squad with a massive lead. But they'll still be easier to handle than most of these underperformers. So, again, Kasho is just like, so instead of trying to counter every squad, we'll devote our time and energy to the rivals who will go down easier. At this point, Arifune speaks up. Do you remember Arifune was in the squad? Because I didn't. As he's just like, and there's more value in snatching a win from the top team anyway. As he's just like, bingo. That is the second factor here. He's like, let's be real here. Even if some losing team cleans house today, and I mean, that's what we saw what Suicide Squad did, he's like, we've got enough points to keep them in the back and not be nipping at our heels. As we see sort of like a graph here with numbers 1 through 11 all signifying different squads. As from what we can see, Suicide Squad 7 has 774 points, and we can see that Kitazoe Squad 4 and Wakamura Squad 11 are the only ones that seem to be below them. But of course, Mizukami Squad 9 has 7,268 points, which isn't quite double. I mean, not really, but it is probably close to, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, if you add our 4/10 of Suicide Squads, you get that. But that's such a point. As he's just like, the only real, as Mizukami himself is like, the only real threat to us is an elite winning team in every match taking us out. So our job is to squash that possibility, and that is our goal for today. And we see the Operator Cone is just like, oh, what a relief. That doesn't sound too challenging. As we also see that Teruya here, who of course is focused on a few chapters ago, is just like, man, I'm so ready for anything. We can do this, right? But Mizukami's just like, the way I see it, the tough part is just beginning. From now until 2 p.m., we're going to keep grinding away on all the delegated assignments. And at that point, we'll start the battle sims. Kasho points out, like, but shouldn't we be training for the battle sims instead? And he's just like, we'll do after 2, alright? As Troy is just like, but why the delegate assignments? I mean, if you say so, but why are we doing this? And Mizukami's just like, here's the deal. The battle sims, it's win or lose, all or nothing. But the time spent plugging away all of the assignments can translate into a lead of points. At the end of the day, I think that this contest is going to be decided by how far each squad gets with the delegated homework. My strats come out on top using our brains, and I'm not backing down on that. So we're going to pump this match as full as we can with homework, and then pick our battles for our matches. And at this point, I see that Mizukami has an Anteater shirt, and that makes me like him a little more. I do like his Anteater shirt. It is pretty good. I mean, Anteater's a cool animal. I mean, I don't really know why it's just got like this white spot on it. Like the legs are all black and like the front half it's all black and it's just white. I don't know. Am I analyzing this stupid little Anteater too much? I don't know. But Cohen's just like, do you expect us to only need a single hour to concoct strategies against 4 different squads for the battles again? And Mizukami's just like I said, I put this plan together because I know all of you guys are capable of pulling it off. And if you can't get it done on time, well, I'll take all the blame, right? As Arfuna is just like, man, that's one hell of a way to ramp up all the pressure, right? As Troy is just like, I know we can manage this. We're good at this stuff, right? And again, Mizukami just says again, as long as we beat 2 out of those 4 top squads and keep going on our delegated assignments, we'll win and we'll have a lead about 800 points or so. And everybody's just like, alright, we're all good, let's do it, yeah! And that's where this flashback ends. And at this point, I think it's time I admit it. Out of this arc, Mizukami's Squad 9 is the most boring part out of all of this. I mean, Mizukami's just not cool. None of his squad mates are really cool besides for Arafune. And it's just a bunch of characters I can't help but care about just sitting here talking about stuff. I mean, and while they have a point, it's a lot better of a point when it's the bosses talking about it. So, I don't know. I didn't really like all of this, but that's not the point. So, we cut back and Netsuki's talking. He's just like, Mizukami's Squad 9 achieved 10th place today, earning 440 points across 2 wins, 7 losses, and 1 draw. These are exactly the results that Captain Murakami was hoping for, but still, it's not amazing. As we see, they got 440 points total, and only 1 against Ninomiya and Murakami squad. 2 of the squads that, yeah, they did want to win against. And I find it funny that they actually drew with Kodera's squad, showing that that was probably the other squad that they were trying to win against to get that 3rd upper win, but that just never happened for them. As we get a little note here, how Director Kinuz is like, I wouldn't be surprised if Maki had some complaints. And of course, Maki was sort of a small deal ranking everybody during the whole Kuroya situation. Sure, I don't care about Maki, and that's just that. I don't care about Mizukami's squad either, so not really much for me to care about. Jin's is like, still, that was only one part of Captain Mizukami's strategy. Last night, he sent the lower ranked teams information on all of the top performers. As we see, this went to Oji squad, Kakizaki squad, maybe, yep, Kitazoe squad, and Wakamura squad. And he sent those 4 squads all information on everybody, right? As Jin's just like, compared to Suwa and the other colluders, this was more of a one-sided, unorganized way to truly go about it. As Kito's just like, well, making outrageous demands of his own squad works entirely differently with strategies like that on the side. It makes little sense in a way. But he's just like, doesn't that make life easier to have a leader like that around in the end? As he looks over to Director Shinoda, as Shinoda's just like, well, there's definitely a time and place for that. As I can't really tell if Kito is sort of getting on Shinoda for being a leader like that, or if Kito is sort of implying that he is a leader like that and asking his second in command, Shinoda, about that. I can't really tell, but leave whatever you think in the comments, right? As Jin's just like, oh, are we talking about Rindo now? So they're probably talking about Rindo then, because yes, Rindo is definitely one person to go out of their way to do shit like that all the time. I mean, that's just classic Rindo, who we know and love. So, I guess that's what they're talking about. Maybe I should have read a whole dialogue bubble in advance. Maybe that would have helped. But, Shinoda's just like, in any case, Kodera's squad today did something very similar. And he's just like, Kodera sent Utagawa, Kitazoe, Oji, Kakizaki, and Wakamura data on Mizukami and Ninomiya, along with all of his thoughts and findings. Which is interesting, because Kitazoe, Kakizaki, and Wakamura were the other 3 people that got sent information with Kodera from Mizukami. And he just sent it to Utagawa for some reason. I mean, I'm sure Kodera knows that Utagawa is also teaming up with Suwa, so in turn with them. I mean, that hasn't really been explained if I don't think so, but whatever. Netsuki just continues like, Captain Suwa's suggestions here must have really struck a massive chord with everybody. As Kinuda's just like, Kodera has shown himself to be very earnest and humble, and those may be his big strengths in fact, right? As Shinoda's just like, but only because Kodera happens to take massive pride in producing massive results. As Jin's just like, hey, that's true A rank material right there. Because of course, as we know, Kodera is an A ranker. I mean, he is from Miwa Squad, so he's an A ranker. He's one of what, the 2 in this whole thing, I think. I think so. But either way, right? He's just like, but then we have squads like OG and Kitazoe's, who chose to fight without making much use of the data that they ended up receiving, showing that they really didn't care too much. And he just continues saying, in a way, Mizukami's choice to leave the bottom squads out of his counter strategies was a very correct approach in this scenario, right? But then Natsuki's just like, alright, Kito, the other squad you're interested in was Nanamiya Squad 8, and I think we've all seen how that ended up playing out, right? And he's just like, so what are your thoughts, Kito? As Kito's just like, my primary concern was brought up by Captains Nanamiya and Azuma themselves. As he's just like, when trouble strings up on an away mission, it makes matters worse when somebody is the type to take on a problem alone, as we see a sort of look of Chika in this sort of spaceship, a few planets in the windows behind her, as she's just like, oh no, I've got to do something, as she sees that a water pipe has broken. Oh no, what are they going to do? That could be deadly, right? And Kinuta points this out himself as saying that could lead to catastrophe. Shinoda is like, and just as Azuma said, Amatori needs to show how to improvement during these trials. Again, just showing how, yeah, that was a really good quote from Azuma, and one I'm sort of embarrassed I forgot for about 5 seconds there. So, at this point, Shinoda's just like, so we need to keep an eye on her progress leading up to the combat phase. Is just like, yeah, that's going to be the key here, right? Nanamiya Squad took 9th place after earning 560 points for 2 wins, 4 losses, and 4 draws. And they were lucky that their final opponent was Murakami's squad, who hadn't received information from the likes of Kodera and Mizukami, because in that point, they probably wouldn't have won. Natsuki's just like, well, from losing that final match would have put them in dead last today, even in more dead last than Wakamura, but we'll get to Wakamura in a second. Let me tell you that much, right? Show's just like, sure, there was all manner conspiring against Murakami and Nanamiya, but tumbling from very first place yesterday to last place today would have really wounded them psychologically, right? Which, I guess that would have happened, but now that Chika's feeling a lot better, and it seems like the team sort of has more of a camaraderie to him, I really don't believe that as much as what Shinoda's saying. Either way, Jin's just like, Chika would have taken that especially hard, but again, after sort of Chika's development here, I feel like it would have worked a bit differently, right? But Natsuki finally says it, and finally, we have Wakamura Squad 11 in last place, with 1 win, 4 losses, and 5 draws. They only earned 400 points. This squad has finished last on all 3 days. Come on, Wakamura Squad, you're better than this, I know you are. And, man, I just love Wakamura Squad, and seeing this really sucks for him, right? I mean, Wakamura Squad has some characters I do like, mainly being this Wakamura and Hughes. The others I don't care about, but I do like Wakamura and Hughes. So, at this point, Kinuta's just like, man, even today, the matches led by Hughes only got them 1 win and 3 draws. I mean, that's not really great. So, I actually don't know which ones that he did. I think that was played out last chapter, 2 chapters ago, or 3, I don't remember, but it was brought up then. Natsuki's just like, but with all due respect to Captain Wakamura, despite his squad's unimpressive results, Hyusei has been awfully docile, right? One could even say remarkably restrained. As Kinuta just continues saying, perhaps he's making light of the whole thing since he knows he can join the away mission as a guide, so why would he care much about the test results giving his position? As Jin is like, I actually don't think that's it. Maybe he thinks that if he came in guns blazing and stirred up trouble in his Squad 11, if he was to suddenly jump on and say, I'm the captain and kick Wakamura out, everybody, all the directors, you 3 especially, could use that as a reason to kick him off the away mission roster. As Kito's just like, right? It would be the perfect pretext to end up mentioning him. As Nexus is like, did you anticipate all that when making Wakamura a captain? And who's this here? Shinoda's just like, don't be absurd. Wakamura was chosen as a provisional captain with the very future of this organization in mind. There was no other reason. As Netsuki's like, right, of course, I spoke out of turn, right? And Kita's just like, I do end up hoping that Wakamura rises to meet your expectations, sir. As I really like this. Shinoda is really pushing for Wakamura here to have a leadership role in Border, and with seeing how he may sort of have a soft spot for Wakamura, and how he thinks Wakamura is good for the future of the organization of Border, it really makes me wonder about what Shinoda's backstory is. Because I can definitely see Shinoda having a sort of milder backstory, one that isn't really too full of everything, just to come on and show that he maybe was like Wakamura when he was younger and moving up all the ranks in Border, not really being able to be decisive. But that's beside the point. That's just crazy guessing and something that couldn't even be right. But if it is, I goddamn called it. Right, either way, Netsuki's just like, moving on, let's finish a look at all the cumulative battle simulation scores of day 3. And we look at all of the cumulative data. And we just see that Utagawa Squad 1 is in first place, and second place is Ninamiya Squad 8, Kodera Squad 6 is in third, and fourth is Suwa Squad 7, fifth is Kizoi Squad 4, sixth Kuruma Squad 5, seventh Mizukami Squad 9, eighth OG Squad 2, ninth place Murakami Squad 10, 10th place Kakizaki Squad 3, and 11th place is Wakamura Squad 11. This is really interesting, and of course all these characters sort of talk about it and break it down themselves, but just from looking at this on my own, it is very interesting that Wakamura has always been on the bottom, with 3 wins, 16 losses, and 11 draws over, 27 total matches, I think? Or is it actually 30? Let's do math here. So if we add 3 to 16, right, we get 19, so 30 total matches between everything. Fun note there. Utagawa Squad 1 is very interesting being in the front, and I can't help but wonder, because of course Utagawa Squad has Shiki on it, which is the operator, Utagawa himself, which he is also an A ranker, but also it has Urashima on it and Yuma, and also Tomoe. Yuma, of course, being on the squad is a big sort of, yeah, that probably helped him, and also Urashima's on that squad, and I've got a big prediction that Urashima will be on the final team, because of course, I mean, if Utagawa Squad 1 is in this place, they're probably going to add Urashima on it, because Urashima made such a big deal out of it before. Granted, he said he didn't want to go, he just wanted to get paid, but that's besides the point, right? Ninamiya Squad 8 is very interesting, showing how bad they did this last day. But before that, they absolutely dominated, which gave them such a lead. Kodera Squad in third makes perfect sense. Suwa Squad in fourth really shows how much effort they did to get back up there. I mean, if we look totally, they only have 1,590 points. And if we remember from last chapter, I think it was like 1,470. They only had like 120 points going into today, and they got so many points of those today. That is nearly insane. Kitazoe Squad 4 makes sense. Kuruma Squad 5, it sure makes sense. 7th place is Mizukami, which shows that while they did really good the first few days, this last day put them really behind, but they still ended up getting 7, which really isn't bad. But if they're talking like they were, saying that, because this is battle simulations, this isn't everything, but knowing that, yeah, I am fairly sure that they will end up winning this thing. And then from there, we just have OG Squad, Murakami, and Kakizaki's. I don't really care about any of those too much. And Wakamura's in 11th. 11th squad and 11th place, but yeah, look at that, right? Actually, none of the other squads sort of have their number, except for first place, which is Utagawa Squad 1, and 11th place being Wakamura Squad 11. Fun fact there, have that for you, right? But for what all of our directors and important people are saying, right, Kino's just like, Utagawa Squad's the top, I didn't really see that coming. I didn't see it either, but again, looking at their lineup, they got a good one. Jin's just like, they've been strong and steady if nothing else, with notably very few losses. The real shocker is that Suwa Squad is managing 4th place despite 16 total losses. That is the most amount of losses of anybody being tied with Wakamura Squad, which is very interesting, right? Natsuki's just like, looks like Murakami Squad ended up in the middle of the pack. And again, she knows just like, yes, but they've banked a sizable number of points by their assignments, so it doesn't really matter. But Natsuki's just like, yet compared to these scores, the grand totals across all days presents a very different picture than how I imagined it. That's very odd. As she knows, it's like, the numbers begin to reveal each squad's shortcomings by far. Jin's like, yeah, they've got to buckle down and all of that. As we finally cut back over to Suwa Squad 7, as the Seal Environment Phase Day 4, the working hours are finally over, as Suwa gets an email and he's just like, hey, heads up game, we got our scores for Day 4. As he goes to open it up, and everybody just looks at it and is like, oh, as we cut around to a bunch of different squads, seeing Ninomiya Squad, Murakami Squad, Kodera Squad, Wakamura Squad, and then at the end, Mizukami Squad, as we see Mizukumi's dialogue just going, huh, what the heck is this all about? As he's still wearing the Anteater shirt. I love the Anteater shirt. And that's where we get into chapter. On my favorite possible way World Trigger chapter can end, with a goddamn email coming through and us not knowing what's on it besides for everybody looking at it. So yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. What's all going on here? What has everybody up in the rounds about what's going on? Personally, I don't have a prediction or anything. I don't really know what it could be, but if I had to guess, it's that Murakami or Mizukami isn't quite in the lead like he thought he would be. Something either happened, or there was like a universal assignment, or it's something where the A rankers rankings are coming through. But that's a bunch of ors, and I don't really know what it is. So it's very interesting that, of course, we focus on Suwa since they're the main squad of this, but also that we focused on the 4 squads specifically. Ninomiya makes sense. It is where, of course, Chika is. Wakamura Squad, we've been focusing on Wakamura Squad, we should all notice by now. And Kodera, we've sort of been focusing on Kodera also, but Murakami doesn't really make sense here. And, of course, Mizukami makes total perfect sense, even though I don't think he's a great character. And that's World Trigger chapters 233 and 234. If I had to say anything, I really think 233 was the better chapter out of these, because it had a lot more characters that I sort of cared about and like. All the stuff with Ninomiya and Chika, all of the stuff with OG Squad and Akoma, and then just a whole breakdown going on here. And then in chapter 234, just having more dialogue and all stuff with Mizukami or Murakami. Mizukami, oh my gosh. Squad at the beginning. Yeah, it was fine. I'm not really a fan of them, so it sort of just took it as a grain of salt. But at the end, yeah, I'm really excited for next month, or if we're even getting a chapter next month. Let me actually go to the Viz, see full chapter listing, and see if we are getting a chapter next month. I won't be surprised if we aren't, just knowing how Ashihara is, and knowing how we ended up getting 2 chapters in this month, which is really nice, because if I'm not mistaken, we haven't had 2 chapters since, let me look here, yeah, January. So, yeah, and it looks like, yeah, new chapter coming on July 3rd, 2023, so you shouldn't be having to wait for too long. And yeah, with all of that, hopefully you're enjoying the World Trigger chapter reviews. Hopefully I made this entertaining for you to listen to, and I love World Trigger. I hope you do too. If you're liking all of the content, please like and subscribe to all of that good stuff there. And without further ado, this will be Glowplasma 231.